Hi, thank you for listening. I just want to put a disclaimer out there that the content matter is a little dark. It's my story, which is traumatic for me. So just a heads up. Thank you. As mentioned in my previous video, I'm going to dive deeper into my story. I mentioned in my previous video how it started in Memorial Day weekend. So I will start there. Um, I started hearing like male voices like a week prior to Memorial Day weekend, but during the Memorial Day weekends when I started really hearing them more. When I first started hearing them, I discounted it. I was like, whatever, maybe I'm hearing things. I ignored it. But these male voices were familiar. Um, some of them I recognized from my high school, and then the others I believe were my neighbors. I ignored it as much as I could until they started mentioning about like, oh, like going to the bathroom or what I was wearing, and everything was spot on, and I was really kind of freaked out. But it wasn't until like that Friday of more Memorial Day weekend, um, around 9 p.m., when one of the perpetrators mentioned, "Oh, can we read her mind?" When that happened, I heard a light switch. When I heard that light switched, I visualized a woman. I've never visualized before up until that point. So I didn't know that it existed. So because of that, I was really freaked out. I knew something was wrong. I went upstairs. I went to sleep hoping that it would be a nightmare, and then when I wake up, it would go away. Unfortunately, when I woke up, I still heard these same male voices commenting about what I was thinking and then commenting about what I was doing. I was freaked out, obviously scared, and one of the first things I tried to do was to commit suicide. I tried to suffocate myself with a pillow. It did not work, hence, I'm still here. I did not eat for, well, I barely ate for 3 days. I did not take a shower for 3 days. I barely slept for 3 days. I remember my dad noticed that, oh, she's really depressed, something's up. So he tried to take us to Palm Springs. We went to Palm Springs and he ordered the pizza that I really liked, which was Round Table at that time, and I only took 2 bites. Like I was completely out of it. I was completely freaked out. Then he asked me like what was going on, and I said like these my neighbors they're stalking me. So we knocked on the neighbor's house. They lived right across the street, and the owners of the house were gone for the weekend. So it was like the perpetrators who lived with the neighbors that were there over the weekend, and they lived with them all the time, but they're there that weekend. And they answered the door, and they said that the owner wasn't there. So we went back to our own house, and I believe my dad got freaked out because he was like, "Oh, what if we accuse them and they can sue us for falsely accusing them?" But um, that was the truth. But I guess he was worried from that on his own end. I took the Tuesday off because I obviously was not feeling well, and then when I went back to school on Wednesday, I was hoping that it would be normal at school, at least kind of normal at school. Um, but as I mentioned in my previous video, these perpetrators slash neighbors were older, like they're in the late 20s slash early 30s during that time, but they portrayed themselves as being in their late teens. So they hung out with a lot of people in my high school. So when I went to school, it was kind of normal up until lunchtime. At lunchtime, someone in my high school had that device. I don't know what they did. They may have duplicated it. I don't know. Had that device, and I totally freaked out. Um, with the technology, you can't really control your thoughts. Like, for at least for me, it really altered the way I was thinking. There are thoughts I'm like, I don't even know. This doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why I'm thinking it. And then coupled with the anxiety and fear that I was going through because it's a very scary situation, I totally freaked out. At least internally, like externally, I try to be calm. Like I put so much energy trying to seem normal because internally I was like going crazy inside. But these high school people in like these individuals in my high school thought it was funny what I was going through. They thought it was entertaining, and I was called an act. And it was to the point that like some individuals in my high school mentioned that they wanted to see me crack. So for them, it was a form of entertainment. I was terrified, but I tried to play it cool because I'm like, I don't know who to trust. If everyone wants to see me crack, if I cry, would they be there for me, or would they like crap on me more? So I kind of like try to hold it to my chest and try to play it cool, as much as I could. I remember I would twitch sometimes because I would think thoughts that I couldn't control, and I would twitch, and I honestly think people would notice, but they didn't say anything. But needless to say, I was too scared to eat lunch outside, and I ate lunch in my chemistry teacher's class for the rest of the year, and that year was one of the worst years of my life. I After that summer, I had the summer, the summer sophomore year. It was pretty rough. A lot of people reached out to them. At least they bragged about how a lot of people reached out to them to want to see, like, I guess they want to see what type of act I was or what kind of chick I was, because they portrayed themselves as somehow being able to understand me. And then people reached out to them as if they were the good guys, which I honestly I think they were just entertained by what was happening, and they wanted to be involved in the madness, and they wanted to be involved in the abuse. That's the only way I can, I guess, process it, because I don't understand how people would reach out to these male individuals, about what a female is doing, and then they would say like, "Oh, she's an act or a tweak or whatever," and people like these some individuals would listen to them. I don't understand that. Honestly, it boggles my mind. But anyways, I couldn't let that time. It was really hard. I don't know how I survived. Like, I can barely control my thoughts. I don't know. Like, it was just a lot. Honestly, I think it was like prayer, God's grace, because honestly, I don't know how I survived. Like, I just took each day at a time. Um, yeah. There was one person from my high school that was she was kind of nice, and we actually became friends for that time. I think she was aware of what happened, and she felt bad for me, so we actually became friends for that time. At least talked on the phone, and that was like my only normal distraction from the madness that was going on. So even though we're not like currently friends at the time, but I do thank her for that, because that was like the only normality I had during that time. Going back to the perpetrators and the creeps. So because I was like considered like a tweaker or an actor or whatever, and I was thinking thoughts I could not control. A lot of people thought I had gone crazy. Honestly, I thought I was kind of going crazy too, and their perpetrators thought I was going crazy too. Um, and because of that, they felt comfortable in sharing stuff about what they've done to other people. They mentioned how they had targeted a like a 13-year-old girl a couple years earlier. They mentioned how they had watched her in the shower, how she was unlucky because when they started targeting her, it was her first day of her period. They also mentioned how they liked her natural hair better because her natural hair is curly, but she was straightening it every morning. Um, they mentioned how they would talk to her with the technology, and she would pretend that it was like she would pretend that she was talking back with the phone because she could hear them the same way I could hear them, but like to make it seem normal, she would pretend that she was on the phone and beg them to stop, and of course it didn't stop. They also bragged about how they didn't take a shower for a month, and then what they did is they gang raped her so she'll never have kids. That was their goal. And then on top of that, which was like a deranged aspect as well, is that they mentioned that they were in love with her. So like honestly, these people are so deranged. Like it's hard to process. Like they did all these stuff to destroy her life, and then they mentioned how they're in love with her. But they exploited her. They used that technology to see her in every weird ways, right? Perverted ways, and then they said that they were in love with her. It's honestly, these people are very deranged psychopaths. Yeah. And then during that summer, I went to the hospital a lot. Um, I got my brain scanned. I also went and man, so these perpetrators mentioned that like they would they would give me a hysterectomy. At that time, like I was a sophomore in high school, I didn't know what hysterectomy was. I had no idea what it was, and I was like, oh, and my fear was like, if they could do this, they could probably could give me a hysterectomy. So I went in, going to the doctor, thinking that I would get a hysterectomy, and then this nurse stabbed me with this one thing, and then after she stabbed me with this one thing, they bragged about like, oh, she's definitely loose now, which shows that they could see me in perverted areas. And for me at that time, I was a virgin at that time, but because of what happened at that nurse's office, they're like, oh, she's loose, and then they use that as proof that I was supposedly sleeping around, and that meant that was an act, which honestly is illogical. And I just think a lot of people were entertained by what was happening, and they were entertained by the abuse. But I guess I'll leave it there, because I know they had very, very perverted intentions. Like they mentioned how like they wanted to rape me. They wanted to use it as a form of pornography. They bragged about how they started this because they were like horny, and then that's why they wanted looking for someone to target. And then they also mentioned at that time that they would target someone every single summer, and then that was their thing. Their goal for me was for me to commit suicide by the end of that summer, so they'll probably target someone else the next summer, but I'm still alive, and then they can't stand the fact that I'm still alive, of course, because they would brag like, oh, she'll be dead like by the end of this summer. I think I've spoken enough, so I'll leave it here, and thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. I have a quick video, just a positive video at the end to hopefully help brighten up your day. Thank you.